So yeah, it's probably from what I'm getting, it's luck plays a very small part in that. It's a
It plays a
lot.
part, though. It plays a part.
Yeah.
Yeah, it does. I mean, but so anybody who looks for wrecks seriously knows that half the time you get to the dock, it don't work,
Yeah.
right? You end up turning around because you can't really side scan in waves bigger than about 3 feet. I used to say 2 feet, but we've been pretty ingenious with our bungee systems and stuff. Um, and if the seeing's no good, if you're only seeing 300 feet per channel because the water is very turbulent and warm, you're also going to head in. And sometimes you have mechanical problems with the boat, and you're going to head in. And sometimes you get out there and the wind kicks up and you got to head in. So, probably half the time, I'd say we get out there to look for a wreck, we end up either A, just not looking for it, or B, some truncated version of looking for it.
Always a bunch of factors. Um,
Well, yeah, like cost is a big one too. You want to look for big wrecks offshore, your boat needs to get gallons to the mile, not miles to the gallon.
what's the one up by Silver Lake? Is that the Mensch, the Annecy Mensch? That's not that far from shore. Is that correct?
Well, there's two of them.
Okay.
Well, if you look in my book of Ghosts of the Oceanic Coast, I've written up not just the big arms to stay storm wrecks, but there are well, not hundreds. There's 66 ships that have been lost in Oceana County waters. Um, the one you're probably thinking of is the Novadoc,
That's it.
which
That's
is
it.
off
Yep.
on Juniper Beach and a beautifully photogenic wreck. I actually interviewed the last two survivors of the Novadoc wreck, Lloyd Belcher and Howard Goldsmith, 20 years ago when I began work on the book. They gave just a harrowing account of that armistice day storm. I mean, being hit by 100-mile-an-hour, gust front that literally knocked the waves over, and then being driven in the trough of the seas. I mean, just they were sure they were going to die. The other wreck that most people know about is the Minch, and of course the Davik is off Little Seville Point, inverted in 208 feet of water. The Minch is an interesting story because Rick Mixter and I did some sort of forensic work to and I did a lot too on the story of the Davik, but to tell the story of her final minutes. Everybody assumed that the Davik and the Minch had collided because the Minch has this big gash in her hull shaped like she's been hit by a ship, and that's what appeared in the reports. Well, the investigation reports for the Minch and the Novadoc were actually classified because the shipping industry on the Great Lakes for Canada was considered a war sensitive wartime industry, and so they classified that investigation file right after World War II, during World War II, and it was never publicly available. Well, I located it at National Archives Canada, and I did a FOIA request for Canada to have them declassify them, and then they released them. And Rick and I got like these huge boxes full of the investigation reports. And what we were able to discern through that and through side scan sonar work on the Minch debris field is that her loss was really harrowing. When she came in, she was coming in stern first, dragging her anchors. She was at the mercy of the gale from out of the southwest. And as she came in, there were 40-foot waves on the lake. And we know that because the Armistice Day storm was one of the first storms to have scientifically measured winds and wave heights. Her stern, if you know the shoreline off of Oceana County, that whole lake shore, there's 3 sandbars in rapid succession before you get to the shore. It comes up, and each one comes up, to about first 20 feet, then about 15 feet, then about 10 feet. So she's dragging in stern first with her hooks out. She's got her engines going full bore because she's trying to keep from dragging ashore. As she comes in over the outer sandbar, she gets lifted up by the big waves, which are starting to curl over the sandbar and smash down over the outer sandbar, and it breaks her in two. Now her stern, her bow is dragging its anchors, but her stern, relieved of the weight of the front, charged off into the waves, kind of like the Daniel J. Morels did, shoots out, gets spun around by the waves, and hits her bow with the jagged corner of the stern that's been ripped off, and sinks the bow, which is already on its way down. But when you look at the wreck site, what you see is that the stern of the Minch is actually further out in the lake than the bow. Well, how does that happen unless the stern powered itself shut itself out under power? And you can see it hit the bow and then it spun around and ended up kind of facing the other way. So, that really kind of helped me retell the story of the Minch. So, if you want to read about those, buy the book, Ghosts of the Oceanic Coast. It's available on Amazon, or you can buy it from me. Um, the other one that was real harrowing was the wreck of the William B. Davok. She People didn't know this until we investigated it. There were radio systems on these boats, and there was a radio ship to shore station, weather station in Cleveland, and these ships were calling back and forth. And I actually found the transcripts of those radio calls between the Davik and some of the other boats that were out and that radio station. And they reported that first gust. And the Steinbrenner was out, and she could see the Davik. They were all the way down at Muskegon. They were already about like 100 miles south of where she ended up. She was about to. I mean, she was not that far from her destination. And the Steinbrenner reported that the gust hit, and the captain's account is just harrowing. That knocked the waves flat, and then it reduced down to about 70 miles an hour, and then the seas came up to about 30 feet, and he could see the Davik turn and run from Muskegon, and then he lost sight of her. Right after that, what we know is that the Davik's rudder chains broke in the huge storm, because that almost happened to a number of other vessels trying to turn in those 40-foot waves, right? Because she was stern to the seas, and once she felt her rudder broke, she fell into the trough of the seas, and she started to be driven north to the northeast, right, by the waves, and she was in the trough of the seas, but she didn't capsize. Or one other vessel at least that ended up broadside of the seas, because vessels that were into the wind ended up in trouble because their propellers would come way up out of the water and rev, and it would break the engine. So these guys had to manually, rev down the engine every time the stern came up out of the lake. It was just exhausting. All night 2 days they did that, stuck out in that storm. The Davik, on the other hand, was driven before the seas for at least 5 hours, with those men knowing they were going to die. When they got off Little Sable Point, she didn't sink because of the big waves. She sank because she iced up. These other boats all reported that they were covered with tons and tons of ice. And the Davik got iced up and eventually just flipped right over and sank immediately. We know that she didn't drift upside down because her smokestack is right there next to her. So, moral of the story, by doing this forensic research and really digging deep to reconstruct these and getting these accident investigation files, we were able to retell the stories of the Armistice Day storm wrecks in ways that no one ever has before. So do check out my book if you want to learn about them. There are also still some missing ships out there to be found in Pentwater. The Willie Keller, the Minnie Mueller, these are all schooners that are still missing out there and could be found. I also talk about a lot of the diveable wrecks in the area. The tug Comanche, I give a full history. The Brighty, the schooner barge, another popular dive site. I reveal a lot of new information that was never known about that loss too. So, yeah, major book that I just wrote last year.
Wow. I'm glad you brought all that up, as you and I had spoke before about, and then that brought to my mind that the ice buildup is what I asked you. Is you think that was a similar fate for the Kamloops? As everybody knows, that's my favorite wreck. You thought that the ice buildup caused her, or at least was partially caused to her sinking too. Is that correct? What you told me, or
It played a role, but I think that she is so close to the island that I don't know if she's enough about it to comment intelligently. But yeah, I think that probably was a big factor. She
Yep.
was lost in the same storm that 1927 that I think the Altadoc came ashore up on Keweenaw Point. You can see the ice on those vessels, so I think that definitely was a part of it. The the Kamloops was definitely drifting though, and there's a big reef right off of there. And the question in my mind is whether she had already taken on a lot of water because of maybe striking bottom or holding her hull. So there's that.
do you want to tell mention for people that object that you were telling me that's north of
Oh
her?
yeah.
That
Yeah, there's a friend of mine who operates a state of Michigan fisheries research vessel, and he was operating a multi-beam sonar there, mapping the bottom for structures that were of interest for fish spawning. and he came across this huge object on the bottom, about a mile and a half from the Kamloops, the size of a ship, and it's absolutely perpendicular to the rest of the geology in the area, which, as you all probably know, runs to the northeast, right? This is running exactly perpendicular, so what could that be? And I got a permit from the National Park Service and worked with Sefti Pasquale, the marine archaeologist there, and I took my archaeological sonar up and scanned that object, and it was absolutely the size and shape of a schooner laying on its side. Positively, we were. The thing about Lake Superior, though, is very few historic wrecks per square mile. There's only Lake Superior has the fewest wrecks of any of the five Great Lakes because they just didn't have a lot of port cities, and most of the traffic on the lake was these large, big vessels like ore boats that are hard to sink. So, not hundreds of little schooner wrecks. And so we know, and also we know about every ship that was lost up there because they were mostly lost in the modern era, right? Because the Sulaks, you didn't have a lot of vessels up there until after 1855. So if there was a schooner missing right up there off of the North Shore of Isle Royale, I think we'd know about it. So we were kind of scratching our heads. Turns out the glaciers knocked a big erratic off of the outer reef there by Hawk Island, and it tumbled inward and ended up, perpendicular on the bottom, laying on its side, and absolutely looks like a schooner, but a big piece of a reef.
Wow, just incredible. Yeah, because you had asked me about that, and I was like, "No, there's no way. No lifeboat. No, that's the size of a small ship or whatever." When you had first showed me that image.
It was 135 feet long. I still am doing some archaeological work up there with the Park Service, looking for the wreck of the Dagmar, one of the little tugs they operated there in the 1920s. At the opening of the season, the captain was taking it from Mount Island to Chippewa Harbor, where the Johnson's resort was, and they'd been drinking a little bit. And instead of turning into Chippewa Harbor, there was a false looking inlet just before it, and they turned into that and ran the bow of the Dagmar high up on some big rocks and punched through a hole. And they had to row back to Mount Island, which was full day and night. And when they got back, the Dagmar was gone. It had vanished. In the night, big waves had come up and had lifted the Dagmar off the rocks. She drifted out somewhere. And if you know Isle Royal, you know at the bottom drops 300 feet, like on a cliff. But, and it's been searched, the deep area's been searched, but no one searched the big shelf off of there. So we started scanning the shelf, and I ran across some man-made debris that probably is from her. I didn't find the ship yet, but I keep looking for her. But yeah, searching at Isle Royale National Park requires archaeological permit from the Park Service, as does really searching in any national park. So, but happy to work with those guys. There's some great people up there at Isle Royale.
Awesome, awesome. Um, um, let's see. We got one more question before we get to the Ghost Ships Festival, and also I always like to ask each person about kind of like what they see for younger generations getting into these types of fields and stuff. So before that, would you do you want to share anything about your database with the over 6,000 database, or did you already touch on that? And any interesting artifacts or articles like the books that you had found that were in? Is that right? You told me you had found other books that were in the Rex that you brought up, or what? How, I'm trying to remember what we had discussed on that.
No. I never bring anything up off a shipwreck. So to recover an artifact from a shipwreck anywhere on the Great Lakes, you need to have an archaeological permit. You need to have an archaeologist who's a professional licensed archaeologist. You need a plan for approval from the state archaeologist. You need a plan for the recovery. You need an institution that's willing to conserve it and display it, and you need funding.
Yeah.
And if that's not all in place, the state archaeologist, the state historic preservation officer won't approve the recovery because it's an archaeological site. All of our shipwrecks on the Great Lakes, with very few exceptions. There's some wrecks that are privately owned. There's some wrecks where that it's questionable whether they actually are covered by the Abandoned Shipwreck Act. But the states believe the vast majority are. So yeah, I don't play that game. I don't collect shipwreck artifacts. I collect antique books, maps, photos, and ephemera.
That I remember. It was what you said that was in Chicago. Those were the ones that you hadn't looked at. Is that correct?
Yeah, that's it.
Yeah. Okay. I had
Yeah.
my
So
mixed around.
yeah, I'll touch a little bit more on some of the databases. I mean, I do a lot of work to transcribe. I've led a few projects, public projects, to transcribe data and put them online in these databases. And I have a pretty active web and social media presence. So, if you go to shipwreck.info is my domain. Um, a lot of the databases are linked from that, but I also am the founder and administrator of the Great Lakes Shipwreck Research Group. And we're a Facebook community of over 6,000 members. I started that, oh God, 20 years ago. So I'm a pretty competent software engineer and did that professionally for most of my adult career. Um, so I would build websites. We had a news group that I built back in 2000, and it was a lot of cool stuff, commentary. If you search, the archives are still up there. You can find all of our discussions from back in the day. But eventually that morphed into a Facebook group, and we have a lot of good discussion. Any new discoveries are posted up there. It's really not a sport diving group for people to post pretty pictures of of common tourism wrecks. We're more interested in telling the stories that haven't been told, finding wrecks that haven't been found, and really discussing research. So the Great Lakes Shipwreck Research Group is a pretty active Facebook community. We also have a YouTube channel where we post a lot of content. I hosted a show similar to this, Great Lakes Shipwrecks Live, where I interviewed some of the foundational figures in Great Lakes shipwreck hunting, because most of them are old friends of mine. And we probably did, I think, 40, 50 episodes that are up there on our YouTube channel. So Great Lakes Shipwreck Research. If you Google that, you'll come up with our YouTube channel. And if you're not a member of our Facebook group, you should join if you're interested in this stuff. We bring in a lot of younger people, in particular our event, the Ghost Ships Festival, does. Just to touch on your question about recruitment
Yeah,
in
yeah,
this community. So I think we all know that sport diving on the Great Lakes, it had its heyday in the 70s and 80s, and to a certain extent the 90s, right? Um, and now what we see is, I mean, it was a baby boomer thing. And most young people have been priced out of scuba diving, for lack of a better term. And the opportunity cost. They have other things they want to do, right? It's like in the 1980s, there wasn't a whole lot of, you didn't have this big, internet thing. You didn't have people just scrolling on their phone all day, right? Um, you had, to find other things to do. And so a lot more people scuba dived in the Great Lakes. What happened is, I think a lot of people not only were priced out, but they wanted to dive elsewhere. They wanted to dive in the Caribbean or what have you. And the number of dive shops on the Great Lakes just plummeted. We have probably less than a fourth of the dive shops that we had when I was doing, actively diving. Probably a fourth of the dive charter services. And when you go to these shows, for the most part, it's people in their 60s, 70s, and 80s. And some of them are real heavy, like on the 70s and 80s, right? You really see, and there's almost nobody who's young. One of the things we've done to reverse that trend, particularly the WUAA and the Ghost Ships Festival, is we offer, so our mission is to provide opportunities for the public to participate in maritime archaeology. That doesn't mean underwater. It doesn't mean you have to scuba dive. We offer remote sensing courses. We offer courses in side scan sonar operation. We offer courses in ROV operation. And if we certify you, you can use our ROVs. You can use our side scan, unapproved projects. And we bring in a lot of these public, a lot of the public that doesn't scuba dive. That's really interested more people in maritime history and maritime archaeology and shipwrecks than a lot of these than these sport diving things. Because, I mean, that's a pretty small, finite group. The only segment that's maintaining is technical diving. Technical diving is always probably going to maintain, because there's just a lot of kind of thrill seekers, kind of like cave divers, right? There's a certain going where no one's gone before aspect to it, that's very alluring. But that's a small exclusive group, because the barriers to entry are huge: costs, training, making sure that your skills are up to date. You have to execute many dives a year to be competent in those types of dives. And not a lot of people want to do that with their life, right? There's a lot of other things going on now that you can do. So So that's what we've done. We've really emphasized, reached out to young people, to academia, to students. We give students free admission, any students. We give scholarships. If you're a student, you can come take our courses for free. If you want to come look for a shipwreck with us on one of our summer projects, we give scholarships to students because it does cost a little bit to go with us. We don't charge money. We're a nonprofit, a 501c3. What we do is the boats cost about $2,000 for gas, right? And so we pass on about half of that. We cover half of the cost. We eat ourselves. So we actually lose, about $1,000 to $2,000 on these expeditions, but we do ask people to help chip in. So it ends up costing between $70 and $120 a person to come out with us. So, but we underwrite that for young people who want to come out with us. If you come to the Ghost Ships Festival, you're going to see it's not all about new shipwreck discoveries necessarily, and it's not always necessarily about sport diving wrecks. A lot of it's about underwater archaeology. A lot of it's about technology, about remote sensing, and a lot of it, is interesting to young people. So we do have a younger demographic, and WUA, our membership is also changing because we're reaching out and making an effort to attract non-divers. So I'll leave that at that. We'll see how successful it is in the long run.
Okay, so you feel pretty confident you'd say like because that was one of my things is like with this channel I like to cover the obscure wrecks, the lesser known ones, their stories, and I love it when family members reach out to me saying that was a great uncle or great grandfather on it. But more importantly, I don't want it to age out, and hearing all that from you, it feels pretty good to because a lot of times maritime, at least Michigan maritime history, as far as I understand, isn't necessarily taught so much. Is that correct to say? It isn't at least by me, you're lucky people know the Edmund Fitzgerald. They know that because of the Lightfoot song. They know that being the most recent one, but like far past that, at least for me, it doesn't seem to go very far. I mean, I could be wrong on that, you know.
Well, I mean, I can comment directly on it. I mean, this is cultural, and what's happened is, teaching of history, arts, general, just things like that have been defunded in favor of STEM, science, technology, engineering, and math, because people need jobs, right? And the vocationalization sort of the workforce, right? And mostly the vocationalization of education, right? You can't go to school anymore to be educated. You have to go to school to get a job. So high schools don't teach history, Michigan history. I took Michigan history when I was in high school up in Calumet. There are a lot of options that aren't there now, or that are less popular. Um, most people aren't going to go to college for a history degree because you can't feed the bulldog with that. And so we have this rise in cultural and historical illiteracy, which is epidemic in the United States. People don't know much about, you know, their history, especially these port cities. This is the Rust Belt, right? We here in particular, have had to, vocationalize our educational system so that, it's designed to help people get jobs, not to help people build a fund of knowledge. And so that's part of what we're up against. And I'm not saying that. I mean, there are opportunities, for people, for organizations like ours to do that kind of education, for interested people, right? And that's what we do. We try to provide that sort of cultural and historical literacy to people who may not have gotten it in school, right? Or who may not have the money to go to college and spend, $40,000 a year to learn about Wisconsin history, right? You can do it on your own time, particularly if you have organizations like ours that can kind of point the way and give you milestones and give you information. So that's my thoughts on it.
Okay. Okay. Well, that's perfect. I thank you, Brendan, for your time that you've been giving us today. I always like to, when we get towards the end of the interview, leave that up to you for the guest. Any final remarks on? I know you've touched on a lot of things, but is there anything further that you'd like to bring up for either future projects or, but also where can people find you specifically? Where can they support you? And really, any last thoughts that you definitely want to throw out there? Put a plug in for.
Yeah, I got three things.
Okay.
Want to just remind everybody, I've got two books that are out there. I just reprinted "Fathoms Deep but Not Forgotten: Wisconsin's Lost Ships." It's got over 400 ships and shipwrecks in southeastern Wisconsin. It's really an opus. It's about 300 pages. It's every ship that was ever lost, and if they've been found, and if not, where you could look for them. Lots of historical imagery from my collection. It's going to be released here in a couple of weeks. And you can get it from WUAA from our website. Just go to WUAA.org. My other book, Ghost of the Oceania Coast, about Pentwater shipwrecks. I'm going to be doing a book signing at the Ford Seahorses Festival in Livonia. You can get copies from me there. Another big book with a lot of illustration. Secondly, I want to just remind everybody, if you're interested in underwater archaeology, you don't have to be in Wisconsin to join the WUAA. We have a major public project this year where we're going out to search and bring the public along to search for a lost ship in Michigan waters this time, but just off the Door Peninsula. We're going to go looking for. I won't announce it just yet because we haven't, but it's a major shipwreck and it's open to the public. But you have to be a WUAA member. I know it costs a staggering $20 a year to join WUA. Go to WUAA.org and feel free to join. If you're in Wisconsin, join us for the Ghost Ships Festival. GhostShipsFestival.com. You can register. I think it's $25 to go to the fest, and it's a great time. It's in Manitowoc at the Inland Maritime Bay. And then, lastly, if you're interested in learning more about what I do, or you have some questions for me, anything like that, just go to shipwreck.info. I have my information up there. Join the Great Lakes Shipwreck Research Group on Facebook. A pretty robust community of like-minded people. You'll meet a lot of interesting and knowledgeable Great Lakes maritime historians there. That's about all I've got. I want to thank you for having me. Really, I'm excited about what you're doing. I really like the idea of bringing new people in, and I think you're reaching an audience that maybe a lot of people like Rick and I don't necessarily reach. And so I really applaud your efforts and your work. And thank you so much for having me on.
All right. Coming from you and I can't thank both you and Rick, for Rick opened the door for me to be able to do this. He gave me his time, he gave me his he sat with me. I've had him on twice now, and then I met him at the MSRA at the Knickerbocker, and so and then he introduced me to you, and I feel like I'm dipping my toe, so to speak, in a giant lake of you guys have been there, done that, and I'm thankful for that to be a part of the ride and to see where it goes. And your knowledge is and your experiences and your field with what you do, people are interested, people want to know about that, and if I can help point them in the right direction with an interview like this, or a ship story that they never heard of, or whatever, you know I'm all for it. And yeah, I thank you for that. Those words encourage me to keep this up, to reach a section of people that you know thank you, Brendan. Thank you both to you and to Rick and everybody else as well who's come on to interview with this. I really appreciate that.
Happy to do it.
Well, sweet guys. Again, I can't highly recommend enough, especially if you have the means to go to the Wisconsin Ghost Ships Festival. Do it. Although you are also, one last thing that did come to mind. You are going to be at the in Livonia end of this month as well. You will be speaking there, correct? That's
Yeah, I'm presenting the FJ King there.
Yep, yep. So that's another opportunity, you guys, to meet Brendan, and Rick will be there too. Is David Trotter's going to be there too, if I remember
Yeah,
correctly? Yep. Okay.
I'm presenting the brothers there.
Okay. So yeah, if you
And
guys,
a couple other good friends will be there too. Dusty Cliffman is going to be presenting some of his amazing ROV work. I've worked with Dusty in the past, and another good guy.
okay.
Unfortunately, he and I are presenting at the same time, so you got to pick between us.
See, I've been thinking about that. I'm thinking I'm gonna do half with you if I can, and half with Dusty if I can, or if I'm locked in one place. I mean, how can I pick you or Dusty? It's like asking.
I know they should have staggered us because we're kind of very similar guys in some ways in terms of what our interests are. So
But
who
you
knows?
you guys will be at your booth so throughout the days in case we can try and catch you there too, correct?
You bet.
Okay, okay. Well, I again thank you for your time, Brendan, and very much appreciate you coming on. Hopefully, we can have you on again in the future, but thank you. Thank you so very much.
Anytime.